you are done with your outline, like we did yesterday via Google Docs, like I mentioned, you do this on your paper. It does not have to be online. Um, this just for me to show it to you. So if you are done with that, then we can go ahead and proceed to um, actually looking at how you're going to do your one pager. Of course, before you do your one pager, you need to be able to make sure that you have it done as a paragraph already on a piece of notebook paper, or maybe um, the loose leaf that you still have in your folder, and that would work. It wouldn't matter as long as you have it on your paper. Just try not to have it where it's torn and wrinkled everywhere. So with the one pager, um, you should have something with a circle in the middle, and this is mine. So I just kind of freehand the circle, so it's a little odd looking. But I want you to see that when you have the steps, your step one should be here. The thing is, later on, that's not really going to matter. What I want to show you is how are you going to do your background. So here's different ways. I've already started. So on this side, on this side, you may want to go over it with a colored pencil. I'm using um, fiction pens. So if I go over it again, it gets darker. And I'm also using my mild liner brush pens just because I have it. You don't have to have any of these. You may use regular markers or colored pencils or crayons even. So if you go from darker shade and then slowly ease it up to a lighter color just to get a gradient um, sort of thing. So what I'm gonna do is when you have it um, colored already, try to make it where it lightly touches it, so it's going to have sort of a gradient. Here's the thing, you may, as long as you're going by that circle, you should be fine. And you may want to space it out just a little bit, not a lot. So go over it if you spaced it out too much to create that um, wave of color that we're saying is basically a way for you to not have to color every single thing on the paper. So another thing is whenever I really like coloring in curves. So I'm gonna use one that I haven't used on that side yet. Let me do it with this one. So I'm gonna use this color, just whatever color you have. I just so happen to have brush pens. So I like the curves that you can see right there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna draw like whatever curve image that you can do. I just really like curves because I think they just look neat. So when you color them in, uh, like I said, you can do this with a regular marker. When you color them in, it just looks like you've created a really nice detail in there, and you are not having to color every single thing with just one color, or there is no, I'm not dictating what kind of shapes you're gonna do on it. So this is pretty abstract. So that's because I like the curves. So if you're more on the math side, and you like it to have angles and like random shapes and all those things, you can do that too. So I'm gonna use this side of my pen, not the brush pen, just so I can show you. Um, so right here I have some angles. So I'm gonna say, oh, let's put a triangle right there. So that's a triangle, not a very good triangle, but a triangle. So you're just coloring it in according to the shape that you decided to make. Does it have to be perfect? No, not really. Remember that this is just a one pager that we are gonna do because of the paragraph that we are working on. So it doesn't mean that the colors have to be better than what you wrote. What I'm still grading is how neat you did it. I'm grading how, like, the effort that I see that you've done on your paper, and of course I'm grading the paragraph itself that you are going to write. So I'm gonna give you another thing that I've talked to you about, but I'm pretty sure is confusing unless you see it on paper. So let me pick another color that I have not used. You know what? We'll use brown just to show you. It doesn't have to be super colorful. You just have to have, um, you just need time to do it. So I don't want a color like this. It takes a lot of time, or I don't have the other colors. Let's say you have just a blue pen, a red pen, okay? So what you can do is actually create patterns. So for example, if you've ever seen coloring books like mandala books, then those would be great. So usually, because this is the corner, I like to have something pointing to that corner. You don't have to copy what I'm doing, and I'm just going to line it. So right now it kind of looks like a web. So I'm gonna work on this just for a little bit, just enough for me to show you. I'm just going to draw a bunch of lines. Still, you're going to angle towards, you're gravitating towards the circle. Sorry, I cannot show you right now. But I'm just going to put a line on it, and then maybe I'll put some circles, half circles. Like I said, they don't have to be perfect. They're just there for a design. So you see, I just put lines and then half circles. And then maybe on those half circles, I'm gonna put another layer of half circles just to create a repetitive pattern. Usually, they are appealing to the eyes when you have some sort of repetitive pattern on your design. So after that, I'm going to try and connect them, make it look like maybe a little bridge, and put another set of just regular lines. So I'm going to show you here in a little bit before I continue moving forward. Such. Okay. So, is there a lot of negative spaces? Yes. But also you're working on a pattern. So it is counted for creativity and design. So that was just my brown. Okay. Now I'm going to say you have a regular red pen. Okay. So with your regular red pen, you may begin doing another set of shape that you would want. I'm doing kind of triangles right now, just because it's different from the previous shape that I've done. See, you can also fill in some of the parts that you've already done earlier, just for a little splash of color, just so it's not so boring. Like I said, a lot of repetitive strokes on this particular way of designing, but that's okay. That's part of um, the design, or that's our excuse. Okay, so here we go. As you can see, I just put a little splash of color right there, and it already looks like it is part of the design. So the good thing about making a design like this is the possibilities are endless, because you can just keep putting more color, you can just keep going on, and you're gonna have a really pretty paper. So pick one of these options. You may do angled shapes. You may do geometrical shapes, whatever you want to do. I like the curves. They're so random, like just blobs and slime. I like that. The gradient is also pretty cool if you would like to use that instead. And then on this side, we have the pattern. So pick one of those, mix and match, or whatever. So once everything is fully colored, so I'm just gonna I'm just going to use like a really light color of orange because a lot of people are asking, where are we gonna put our writing, Miss Walker? So the writing is going to be on top of the colors that you've already done. So my advice is to work on your background colors first, and then um, make sure that you're using ink pen. So use a ball pen, a very fine tip marker if you have those. Some people have asked me about using markers. It's up to you. Try it out first on a different paper because you don't know how thick it's gonna look like and is it going to fit once you start writing. So I have right here already a picture of my step one. So if you remember yesterday, my step one was to prep and gather materials. So I have here preheat the oven, and you have your materials, flour, and all of those things. So the first thing you're gonna have to do is to use an ink pen that I don't have right now around me. So I'm gonna use one of my markers to make sure that you have those outlines. So a trick with this one is, again, mix and match your colors, because if you're using just a pen and you only have black and red pen, it can still look really good as long as you have as long as you're not using it like only one color per picture. So I'm gonna just use that right here. So I'm writing it down. Okay. So just a little bit of color, just red and black. Okay. And I wrote down the name. So after this one, you can go ahead and erase that. So my advice is to really use a pencil and just go over it with your pen. Sorry, my pencil fell. So you can erase that here in a minute, because maybe you would like to put more designs on there, or maybe you would like to have some instructions. So right here, if you can see, I used my marker, but it's not a fine tip marker. So my letters, I have to make sure that I space it out. Otherwise, it is not going to be legible. And that's one of the things that I'm grading, because if I cannot read it, I would not be able to grade it. So hold on, let me grab a pen. So I'm back with a pen. This is just a regular 0.7. So my step one was to, I said first, prep and gather materials. So as you can see, there's no color right here right now. So I'm thinking we need to put some color right there before I put my sentence in it. Why? Because I would really like for you to see how it should look like when you have colors on there. And make sure that your marker colored parts will be dry before you put ink on it, because you know that it will smudge and then you're going to get frustrated because now you will have to redo your work and nobody wants to do that. Okay, so I'm going to get another color and maybe just put a really wild looking angle over here. I say wild, but it's just like two angles added. So I'm using a pink. I'm going to show you here in a little bit. All you have to do is make sure that most of it is colored, because like I said, you can always say, Miss Walker, it's part of the design just for this project. Okay, so now I have my colors right there. So we're waiting for them to dry for the step one. But my part for the step two is already dry. So I'm going to go ahead and write my step two, even though I have not drawn anything yet. So my step two is to, I remember that I started with the word two, but just so I'm looking at the proper thing. Yes, I did. So I said to start